Hi there folks, welcome back to another video in this Battleship series. In the last video we created and finished off our ship objects and our guns objects. We also created the function that will randomize the location of the computer ships. We will use that function later on to call random positions for the player ships onto the grid. It's working quite well. There was just one change that we had to go in and make. Under the randomized ship positions, right at the bottom of the function, there was if I've still got it, there was a print placed ships line there. We just want to go ahead and remove that so that it doesn't continuously print out every time we select to randomize the ship locations. Right, that's great. So what we're going to go ahead and now do, let's just take a look at our game grid quickly. If we run it, we'll see that our screen pops up. Our computer ships are already appearing on the computer grid, and that's correct. That's how we want it. What we want to happen next is, so I'm thinking what we should go for now is to create the buttons. What we should do is create the various buttons, randomize location, randomize positions, reset, and deployment, or basically start game. So we'll create those buttons first, so that we can select or randomize the position of the ships, reset the positions, whatever. And basically, ultimately, once we hit that deploy button, we should not be able to move the ships anymore. They should be stuck in place for the remainder of the game until the game is reset. So in order to do that, we're going to create a button object. So we're going to go back up to the top here. Well, firstly, I think we're going to load in our button image. So going down to our images, okay, to the game list and dictionaries. Underneath the fleet, we're going to create a list, an empty list called buttons. Another dictionary, an empty list called buttons for now, and in that list we're going to, below the list, loading game variables, randomize images, fleet, randomize positions, we are going to, we need to load the button image. And I'd like to load it just once. So I'm thinking game sounds and images. Here we're going to create a variable called button image, and it's a load image, and it's going to be assets, images, background, buttons, and I think it's just button if I write. Click back there. Button.png. Right. The size that we want for the button, if I have it correct, the size that I already had worked out was going to be 150, 50, and it doesn't need to rotate, so we're going to leave it just like that. Okay, so that's going to automatically load the button image into our game. Then we want to go back up to the top, and my mouse is just disconnected. That's weird. Great. So we come back up to the top by our classes, just underneath my guns class. We're going to go up there. We're going to create a class called button. Nothing fancy, nothing at all, just very straightforward. Create the button class. Now our button class is going to take a couple of arguments. First one being the image. Then we're going to have size, position, and message. So basically, what is the text that's going to be displayed on the button? So let's just go straight forward with this. Self.name will be to message. So we know the name of the button, and we'll say self.image will be equal to the image, which we've already loaded, and we're just going to pass into this directly. We're going to create a new thing, so we'll call it self.image larger, and that will be equal to self.image. And then we're going to take the self.image larger, and we are actually going to transform that with Pygame transform scale and self.image larger, and we will make it take the original size. Take the original size plus 10 pixels and size plus 10 pixels. Right, so we've done a self.image larger, and then we're going to scale it up by 10 pixels width and 10 pixels height, just to make it slightly bigger. So the reason for that is we want to have an image to replace the original image whenever the mouse moves over the button. So then we'll know that the button is picking up the mouse. Okay. The next thing we're going to go with self.rect equal to self.normalimage.getRect. Right, and then self.rect.topleft will be equal to the position that we will feed the button. Then I'm going to create another attribute here. Will be called for now. We'll call it self.radar used. That will be equal to 0. We will touch on that attribute later on when it gets to it. Okay, self.active will be equal to true, false. Self.active is the buttons. Again, this attribute will only come into play later on, but we'll just create it now so that we don't run into any problems later on. Okay, the last two little attributes we want to create, we're going to take self.message will be equal to self.addText. So this is obviously to add the message or the display, the writing on top of the button. Which is a method that we still need to create, which we will create in a moment. And self.message rect equal to self.message.get rect, and the center will be equal to self.rect.center. That will center the word on the button. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create that add text method in our button. So we have to go to define, add text. That's pretty straightforward. Pass it the message, and the little descriptor for the method will be add font to the button image. Right. So if we go along, we're going to say font will be equal to Pygame.font.sys.font, and it will be stencil and 22. Right, and we'll say message will be equal to font.render the message. Here list will be 1, the color will make it what? 255 by 255 by 255. That's the color of what? Once that's done, we will then return the message, and that will then appear on my button. Okay, so far we have all the makings of the button. We have no functionality for the button, but we can create the button. So let's go ahead and create a button so long. Let's just copy this down. Copy. Here on my buttons list. I'm just going to give it space. We're going to call button. And then just pass as an image. So the image will be button image. Right? And then, I see there's an issue there. These gain sounds, these are below. Maybe these gain lists in dictionary should be below this. I can't do it below the create sheet, but my buttons should be below. Okay, I'm just going to take my buttons list. I'm just going to plop it down below my button image for now. It's not great, but it's. I'm not going to fuss about it too much right now. It's just so we can carry on building up. We want to build. So the size of my button we've already discussed is going to be. I'm going to create my buttons. The size will be 150 by 50, and the position. The first button will be at the 25 900. Oops, that must be in parentheses. And the message for the first button will be randomize. Right. And then here in my update game screen for ship and player fleet, here I'll say button in buttons list, button dot draw. Now, of course, we don't have a draw function just yet, so let's go back to our buttons class. Got the add text. Let's go def draw window argument. So in my button dot draw class, we want to go with window dot lit. Self.image, self.react. Great. So if I play this game now, there should be a button that appears on my screen. And no file, assets, images, background, buttons, button. Assets, images, oh. We've gone into the background folder. There's nothing in the background folder for buttons. We must go that far. We must just from images to buttons. Let's try that again. And at the bottom left here, we have a button, as you can see. So that's when we're working fine. Obviously, as I mentioned, there's no functionality. I can click on it as I want, nothing's going to happen. Great. Why did the randomize word not appear? Look at that. What's up with that? Draw, self.image. Correct. Alright. So when we run this, we see that our button is there, but there's no right kind of button. I realize what the problem is. So in our draw method, we're calling the button, but we're not calling this message. We're not actually calling the message itself, only the picture of the button. What we could do is below this, we could go window.lit, self.message, and then self.message rect. And that would then have the text of the button appear on the button itself, as you can see, randomize. Now, the thing I wanted to do is we want to handle the focusing. So when the mouse scrolls over or moves over one of the buttons, the button should enlarge itself. So to show that it's being focused on. So let's go ahead and create that method quickly. I'm going to call it focus on button. So okay. Brings attention to which button is focused. Alright. And then in this one, we're just going to go with, first we're going to say if self self.rect dot blood point is self.rect.collide point and Pygame mouse.get pose. Okay. So if doing that, then what should happen is we should let window dot lit self.image larger self.rect. Because we want the rectangle of the image to the button to stay the same, we just want the look of the button to expand. Else, just want to blip to the screen the normal image self.rect. So now this method, in our draw method, we're calling the image straight up. Instead of just calling the image straightforwardly, we want to call now focus on button. And that should be self.focus on button. So now what will happen is the button should still appear on the screen with the text behind it, but if I move my mouse over it, it should be enlarged and smaller, larger and smaller, larger and smaller. Seems to be working, but as you can tell, the larger image, I don't want it to expand the way it's expanding right now. It's only expanding downwards and to the right. That's not quite what I want. So in our focus on button, we're going to go with, we need to change the rectangle position of our image. So self.rect 0. Okay. This needs to be self.rect 0 minus 5. Self.rect 1 minus 5. And that should be it, actually. Well, let's just go in self.rect 2, comma, self.rect 2, and then self.rect height. Should all remain the same. The width and height should remain the same. So now if we run it and our mouse over the button, it should remain in place but just increase in size. As you can see, that's what it's doing now. So I'm happy with that. So we've got the randomize button created. Let's go ahead and give that randomize button a function. Let's go ahead and give that randomize button a function or some functionality. So if we click the randomize button, our player ships should jump to the screen. Well, we've already created a randomize ship positions function with a ship list and a game grid. Next thing we need to do is we actually need to create an action if this button is pressed. And what it's going to do. So we've got focus on button, which is fine. We've got add text, which is fine. We've got draw, which is fine. So what we're going to go now is we're going to create a method under the buttons called action on press. Okay? And what that's going to take is going to take in particular what button it is that we pushed, and from that on call a method. So if which actions to take according to button selected. At the moment we only have one button, but that doesn't matter. So we go to self.name is equal to randomize. Right, we're going to go with, we need to say pass for now because we need to create the function. I'm going to go below here. Take this one. Function is going to be randomize ship positions, and we will need to pass it to function to methods ship list and a grid. Alright, and then within this function method, all we're going to do is we're going to call the randomize ship positions function, and the arguments it will take is that ship list and the game grid. Alright. Okay, let's just give it a small descriptor. Calls the randomize ships function. Okay. Yeah, under my action on press, if self.name is equal to randomize, I'm going to go with randomize ship positions, and we will pass that player fleet and player game grid. Because we're not going to be randomizing the position of the computer, although we could. Let's do that. I'm going to call self.randomize. So every time we hit this button, we'll be randomizing the ship positions for the computer as well. So C fleet, C game. Okay, so let's action on press. Okay, that's fine. We've got that. Now we actually need to check for collision if the button is actually pressed. So here in my event handler, for mouse button down, if event button is equal to 1, okay. So then for ship if ship flight points, no, well, we're not going to be looking at the ships. We're now going to have an additional for loop for button and buttons. If button dot rect dot collide point with Pygame dot mouse dot get was button dot action on press. Right, so now we're calling the method of whichever button it is that we pressed. If I run this method now, or if I run this program now, if I hit the randomize button, the computer player's ships should randomize, and so should the player's ships. So the player ships should be randomized and placed in the grid, and the computer ships should reorganize themselves. So here goes nothing. And if I hit it again, how's that position? That's crazy. Look at that. Anyway, randomize. Oh man, it's working. So there we go, guys. We've created our randomize button. The next thing we need to do is create our reset button. So the next thing we're going to go is we're going to go to our buttons here. We're going to go button, and we're going to feed it the button image. The same size as the button above. The position for this button is going to be buttons 200 by 900, and this one is going to say reset. I've forgotten the comma there. There we go. Alright, so let's go back to our button class. So now obviously we're going to have a button that says reset, which is cool, but we don't have any actions for that button. Let's go ahead and build it first before we get too far ahead of ourselves. So if self.name is equal to randomize, else elif self.name is equal to reset. So if I'm just going to say pause for now because we still need to create that method. Define reset ships. list, and that's the only thing we'll need. Okay, resets the ships to their default positions. Right. So all it's going to do is going to take for ship in ship list ship dot return to default positions. Straightforward. Nothing too hectic there. Where do we call the method? Over here, our reset, we're going to say self.reset ships. And the ship list will be the player fleet. Alright, if we run this again, we should have the button appearing. Randomize, reset, as you can see. If we hit the randomize button, if we hit the reset button, randomize, reset, randomize, reset, randomize, reset, randomize, reset. That's what you call it. That's as good as I can get it. I'm quite happy with the way it's running. Alright, the next button that we need is the deploy button. So this button is going to take a little bit longer to implement because we do now then need to implement a variable which will be checked every single time any function or button wants to be checked or called to see if that variable is true or not. If that variable is true, i.e. if the game is in deployment mode, then they should be able to do those functions or like move the ships or whatever. But if the game is out of deployment mode, basically the game has started, we should not be able to move any of the ships anymore. So the first thing we're going to do is just create the button. Let's go down to our buttons, our button list. There's a button image, and go with 150 by 50 again, and it's going to be in the position 375, 900. Right, and it's going to be deploy. Okay, come back to our button class. Action on press. Right, I'm going to say here if self.name is equal to deploy. Okay, we'll just say pass for now. Right, so now we've created the deploy button. We're going to go down to, I can use a global variable. I don't really want to. I'll tell you why. It's because I used a global variable when I made the game originally, and then I forgot what that variable was for, and I forgot where it was coming from, which is one of the things that they actually warn you about when you use global variables, is that when you're reading the code again a few days later or a month later or whenever it is, you come back to read the code, you don't actually know where these variables are coming from anymore, or how they're being adjusted, or what they're for. And of course, I didn't leave the comments or anything like that for it, so I was just thinking, what if in my run game loop I had a check to see if my deployment was true. If I run a function. Alright, so what I was thinking what we could do is we create our variable still. So learning game variables over here. Let's go to our game settings and variables rather. From there we'll call it deployment. And because we're in the deployment phase as we start, we'll call it true for now. We'll create a regular utility function under my randomized ship positions. Say deployment phase. Right? And in this function we're going to take our deployment variable. We're going to pass out our deployment variable. So we're going to pass our deployment variable, And then we're going to say if deployment is equal to true, we want to return false, else return true. Okay, so just bear with me. I'm trying to do this through a function to change a variable instead of doing a global variable, which is a lot simpler, I agree. Let's just see how this would be done. So our deployment says it's true. We want to run our deployment phase, but we only want to run this function if that button is ever called. Okay, if that button is ever called, so yeah, so if button.rect.cloudPoint button.action.press, then yeah, if button.name is equal to deploy, right? Then we would call the deployment phase deployment, right? Okay, but this one now status, because now status is equal to true or false. So if the button.name is selected as deploy, status will be changed. So deployment is currently set to true, status will be changed to false. And then once the status is changed, our deployment variable will then become our status variable. Okay. Let's print that out quickly. Print deployment. I'm just going to print it there, and over here, straight after this is created, I'm going to print deployment. So as you'll note, we've done the action for our button here. Button.deployment phase. I could actually have done that. I don't have to create a utility function, so I can keep that within the button still. So let's go back up to our class button. Okay, let's just take our deployment phase, this function. We're going to rather keep it as a method within our button function. Okay, so I'm going to reset ships. Here, I'm going to include it there as define deployment phase. We're going to have self and then deployment, which will be the argument that we'll be passing to it. Alright, the argument we'll be passing to it. So lf self.name is equal to deploy. We'll be calling the function self.deployment phase and deployment. Right. So we'll be calling that will be the pass to it. So if deployment is true, return false, else we will return true. Right. Doesn't quite work. That doesn't quite work. Because now we're calling the action on press, which will do the deployment, call the deployment function, independent of assigning it to like it does here. So this little block of code would almost be redundant. So I'm going to go back. So the problem is this function will have to stay under my utilities and under my button function. Over here, it's just going to have to say pass for now. I don't need to pass it any arguments. so I can take that out. Alright. So if I run this now, we have our 3 buttons. You'll see it printed true for there at the top there, printed true. Alright. If I click the button, it should say false. Nope, we have a crash. Line 481, wiggle status to deployment phase takes 1 position on 2 again. Of course, because I'm still calling it from the button as a method. I almost called the actual regular function. There it is there. Let's try it again. There we go, true. And if I call it randomize deploy, it prints false. So we're no longer in the deployment phase. It's now false. Which is fine, that's what I wanted. I needed it to do, and I'm not using a global variable, which is my goal there. So we can take out the deployment. Alright, so the reason why we have a deploy function is now buttons. Once you've hit the deploy button, you shouldn't be able to move your ships anymore. You shouldn't be able to randomize the ship positions anymore, and you shouldn't be able to rotate your ships anymore. Basically, it means that the game has now started. And in order to do that, we need to add a couple checks in a few places. So deployment, if deployment is equal to true, so basically, well, we can do it here. When top button is equal to 1. If deployment is equal to false, which means we're no longer in the deployment phase, I should not be able to select any of the ships. I can still hit the buttons. So in my buttons, I need to do a couple of checks. Yeah. From the 3, which is my right click button, if this button is pushed, I should also be doing a check there, so that I cannot be rotating any ships. False. All of this needs to be tabbed. Alright. So if I run this game right now, the way it's looking, I should randomize my ship positions, everything's pressed forward, but I can still I can't move anything. Wait. Why can't I move anything? Say the deploy button. This deployment is equal to short. Of course. Deployment phase is equal to true. Deployment phase is equal to true. Sorry, I got that swapped around the way. So if my deployment phase is equal to true, I should be able to move the ships around as I please. Down there, rotate it. The moment I hit the deploy button, I should now not be able to move any of these ships around. However, I can still randomize my ship positions and reset. So the buttons are the selecting ships and rotating ships has basically been deactivated just in this section of code here. If the game stage has started, but the buttons are still functional, meaning I can still randomize the ship positions and I can still reset the ship positions. I want to go back up to my buttons class, and in my randomize ship positions method, I just want to put in a check if deployment is equal to true, then I can randomize the positions. And in my reset ships, same thing. Just a simple check if deployment is equal to true. Great. Let's go back into the game. This is something I'm thinking about. Randomize ships deploy. Can't move any of the ships around. That's fantastic. Can't rotate them. Fantastic. Can't randomize anymore. Can't reset the ships. What if I hit the deploy button again? I should now be able to, theoretically speaking, I should be able to select the ships. I can. which is cool, but that's not quite what I want. That's not quite what I want to be happening. Once the game starts, this should be a game over button or a quit button or something like that. Okay, anyway, I hit the deploy button again. There we go. Can't select anything. Great. So in order to fix that, well, I can just go in and fix my deployment function. Deployment phase function. Turn false. I think for now, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. We will come back later on and possibly remove those two lines if we remember. It won't really be necessary. I think what we're going to do is, once we've switched the deployment phase into the game running, we're going to change the names of the buttons. So we'll swap out the buttons to other buttons, which will then call other methods, not the same methods, which means we then won't be sitting with the same problem. I think. So yeah, I think we'll do that in the next video. Thank you very much for following along on this one, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.